When Souldiers came out in June of last year, it was a disaster. The game basically had to be re-released 2 weeks later due to game-breaking glitches and an unfair difficulty that made it to where only a handful of players were able to overcome its ridiculous challenges. The common modern trope of waiting a couple months until you buy a game so you can get the genuine experience rang true. And while this video is not an attempt to give Retroforge an excuse for putting out a broken game, in all fairness, this was their first IP with an indie budget. And after having recently played most of it, I can confidently say that it's worth the pickup. But you're going to want to hear the full review before you go out and pick up a copy. So let's get to today's review. As always, if you like what you see, hit that like and subscribe, and if you're feeling extra wild, hit that bell notification so you can stay up to date with the channel. Before we get into the meat of this review, I'm glad to say that at least in my experience, nearly all of the issues that plagued Souldiers has been resolved. The difficulty is now up to you due to rebalancing and an added difficulty slider. I personally played the game on Warrior, which is the second highest difficulty in the game, and I thought the challenge was perfectly balanced. Though, for those interested in the original difficulty that made so many people miss out on the game in the first place, it has been re-added, you may be glad to hear. I experienced no game-breaking glitches, no saves being corrupted, nor any other issues like soft locking. Loading times on the PS5 are still strangely slow, as well as save times, but nothing that ever took away from the full experience. Souldiers takes place at the beginning of an open feud against the Dadelm army. In the middle of a battle, you and your army find yourself whisked away by a Valkyrie to the mysterious world of Terragaia, essentially some type of purgatory. Are you dead? Are you alive? Who knows? But your main goal is to escape. The bright and cheery world that you now inhabit is home to a ton of likable characters full of charisma, and though they never hit the same memorability that game characters such as Hollow Knight have, they're plenty likable, and I enjoyed each counter that expanded the lore throughout. The aesthetic for Souldiers is in jaw-dropping pixel art, at least at times, with some of the more detailed artistry that I've seen in the subgenre. From background to foreground, there's clever use of detail that truly had me inspired throughout. The characters are in an awesome chibi-style sprite format, which I'd forgive you if you're not into that, but for me brought waves of nostalgia. The game has a certain level of detail that you don't typically get in this genre, from dust being knocked off of platforms when you jump onto them, as well as a crispiness to the art that constantly reminds you that while this may be an ode to the classics, this is very much a modern 16-bit game. While Souldiers markets itself as a Souls-like Metroidvania, which it clearly is in terms of most of the level structure, its constant difficulty, and plethora of bosses, there's also a ton of other influences throughout worn on its sleeve. The game feels like a light mix of Dark Souls, Hollow Knight, and Final Fantasy from the PlayStation 1 era, all wrapped in a beautiful pixel art package. It never leans into one influence too much, and in my opinion simultaneously scratches an itch for all of them. It's truly a beautiful thing, one that I believe Retroforge needs some type of recognition for. The level design, combat, boss fights, puzzles, exploration, and progression are so superbly done, it kinda made me feel like a little kid again. The issue here is that I'm not a kid, and Souldiers' biggest and possible only misstep in my opinion is that they do not respect your time. Everything in this game just drags on too fucking long. I've sunk 34 hours into the game and am at a 73% completion. And I just woke up one day and just couldn't keep going. While quality never really dimmed in that time, the game had completely worn out its welcome. My initial goals of completing the game and going on to platinum it by completing it 3 more times were just dashed away from me because I just couldn't go through one more dungeon. Now, I'm fully aware that there's tons of games out there for people in all walks of life, And I know for a fact that for some people out there, that this is a positive instead of a negative. And for those who it is, I could not recommend the game more. Please do not be mistaken. But for me, the beautiful world of Terragaia will probably go unconquered. And that's okay, because for what it's worth, I still enjoyed my time spent there. It's an 8.5, take it or leave it.